My name is Carolyn. I am 58 years old and I live in North Carolina. Right now, I am sitting in my spacious living room looking out at my beautiful flower garden. But 6 months ago, I was sleeping in my old Honda Civic, shivering under a thin sleeping bag in a parking lot. When I called my son for help, he said, "Just sleep in your car a little longer, Mom. I am busy." That was the moment I realized I had raised him wrong for 32 years. Before we dive into what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if stories about family betrayal and finding your strength again speak to your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Trust me, you will want to hear how this story ends. What my son and his wife did when they showed up at my new home with moving boxes will leave you speechless. So let us begin. I was born and raised in a small rural town in North Carolina, the kind of place where everybody knows everybody, and neighbors still bring casseroles when someone is sick. My father was a carpenter who built furniture with his bare hands, pieces so beautiful that people drove from 3 counties away just to buy them. My mother worked as a nurse at the local hospital, pulling 12-hour shifts and still coming home to cook dinner for us every night. From them, I learned that hard work was not just something you did, it was who you were. Family came first, always, no matter what. I met Thomas at our local church when I was 22 years old. He was 25, tall, with kind eyes and hands that were always fixing something. He worked as an electrician, climbing poles and stringing wires in the summer heat and winter cold. We did not have much when we got married, just a small apartment and 2 paychecks that barely covered the rent. But we had each other, and back then that felt like everything. Derek came into our lives when I was 26. I remember holding him for the first time, this tiny bundle with Thomas's nose and my eyes, and thinking that my heart had never been so full. Thomas would come home from work covered in dust and sweat, and the first thing he did was pick up that baby and dance around the kitchen with him. Those were the happiest years of my life. Then, everything changed. Derek was 7 years old when I got the phone call. It was a cold December afternoon, and I was making hot chocolate for him when the phone rang. One of Thomas's co-workers was on the line, his voice shaking. There had been an accident. Thomas was working on a high-voltage power line when something went wrong. By the time the ambulance arrived, it was too late. I do not remember much about the days after that. I remember the funeral, the black dress I borrowed because I did not own one, the way Derek kept asking when Daddy was coming home. I remember sitting him down on his bed, holding his small hands in mine, and trying to explain that his father was in heaven now and would not be coming back. His face crumpled, and he crawled into my lap and sobbed until he fell asleep. I held him all night, crying silently into his hair, wondering how I was supposed to do this alone. But I did not have time to fall apart. I had a child to feed, bills to pay, and a mortgage that was not going to pay itself. I got a job as a cashier at the local supermarket, working the morning shift. Then I picked Derek up from school, made him dinner, helped him with homework, and headed to my second job as a waitress at the diner on Main Street. I did not get home until 11 most nights, and I was up again at 5 to start all over. There was a man named George who started coming into the diner regularly. He was a manager at the bank downtown, always dressed nice, always polite. He asked me out for coffee once, then twice, then a dozen times. He was patient and kind, and part of me wanted to say yes. But every time I thought about it, I pictured Derek's face. He had already lost his father. How could I bring a stranger into our home? What if Derek felt replaced? What if it did not work out and he lost someone else? I could not take that risk. So I told George no, again and again, until he finally stopped asking. For years, my life revolved around Derek and nothing else. I wore the same clothes until they were threadbare, because new shoes for him were more important than a new blouse for me. I skipped meals so he could have seconds. When his friends had the latest toys, I worked overtime so he would not feel left out. I never complained, never even thought about complaining. That was what mothers did. You sacrificed. You gave everything you had and then found a way to give more. I remember when Derek turned 12. He wanted a bicycle, not just any bicycle, but a specific brand that all his friends had. It cost $300 more than I made in a week. I told him I would see what I could do. For 3 months, I picked up extra shifts every chance I got. Night shifts, weekend shifts, holiday shifts. I barely slept. But on his birthday, when he came downstairs and saw that bicycle with a big red bow on it, the look on his face made every exhausted bone in my body feel brand new. Derek was a good student. He got decent grades, stayed out of trouble, and when he graduated high school, he got accepted to college with a partial scholarship. I was so proud I could have burst. But the scholarship only covered half the tuition, and I did not have anywhere near enough saved for the rest. So I did what any mother would do. I went to the bank and took out a second mortgage on our little house. That house meant everything to me. Thomas and I had bought it together back in 1990 from an elderly couple who were moving to Florida. It was small, just 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, built in 1965. But we had made it ours. Thomas had planted rose bushes in the backyard, and every summer they bloomed in shades of pink and red. There was a door frame in the kitchen where we marked Derek's height every year on his birthday. Every corner of that house held a memory, a piece of our life together. But I signed those papers without hesitation, because my son's future mattered more than my sentimentality. Derek graduated with a degree in business and got a job at a real estate company in Charlotte. I was so proud I showed his graduation photo to everyone I met. My co-workers at the supermarket, the regulars at the diner, even strangers in line at the grocery store. That is my son, I would say. He is going to do great things. A few years later, Derek met Brittany. She worked at the same company, something in marketing or public relations. I was never quite clear on the details. She came from a well-off family in Charlotte, the kind of family that had summer homes and country club memberships. When Derek brought her home to meet me, I could tell she was not impressed. She smiled politely, but her eyes kept darting around our small living room like she was cataloging everything that was wrong with it. The wedding was beautiful. Too beautiful, really. Brittany wanted it at an expensive venue outside Charlotte with imported flowers and a 7-course dinner. The whole thing cost more than I made in a year. Derek called me embarrassed and said they were a little short on the budget. I told him not to worry. I sent them $15,000, nearly every penny I had saved. It was supposed to be my retirement cushion. But what was retirement compared to my son's happiness? There were warning signs I should have paid attention to. When Brittany was planning the wedding, she never invited me to help choose the dress, or the flowers, or the cake. I offered more than once, but she always had an excuse. "It is a mother-daughter thing," she said with that polished smile. "You understand." I told myself I did understand, that it was normal for the bride to want her own mother involved. But it stung more than I wanted to admit. After the wedding, Derek started calling less often. At first it was every week, then every other week, then once a month. Eventually I only heard from him on holidays, and even those calls felt rushed. I would ask about his life, his job, his wife, and he would give me one-word answers before saying he had to go. I tried visiting once, driving 3 hours to their apartment with a casserole and a pie, but Brittany met me at the door and said it was not a good time. Derek waved from behind her, looking uncomfortable, and I drove home with the food still warm on my passenger seat. I told myself it was normal. Young couples were busy. They had careers, social lives, responsibilities. Derek still loved me. He just had his own life now, and I needed to respect that. Our little house stayed the same through all those years. I had paid off the second mortgage, eventually working double shifts until my feet ached and my back screamed for mercy. By the time I was in my mid-50s, the house was fully mine again. I painted the trim, fixed the leaky faucet in the bathroom, kept Thomas's rose bushes alive and blooming. I thought I would live there until I died, surrounded by memories of the life we had built together. I thought I was safe. I thought wrong. September came with warnings. The weather forecasters had been talking about the storm for days, a massive system building in the Atlantic, expected to make landfall somewhere along the Carolina coast. I watched the news every night, tracking the red and orange swirls on the map as they crept closer. When they showed the potential flood zones, I studied them carefully. My neighborhood was outside the red area, just barely shown in yellow, for moderate risk. I had lived through plenty of storms before. The house had always been fine. My neighbors started evacuating on Tuesday. The Hendersons across the street loaded up their minivan and headed to relatives in Tennessee. Old Mrs. Patterson next door went to stay with her daughter in Raleigh. They knocked on my door before they left, asked if I wanted to come along. I thanked them but said I would be fine. I had ridden out dozens of storms in this house. It had never let me down before. I bought extra supplies just in case: candles, batteries, bottled water, canned food that did not need refrigerating. I filled the bathtub with water like the emergency broadcast suggested. I charged my phone and my old portable radio. I was prepared for a few days without power, maybe some tree branches in the yard. That was all I expected. The storm hit Wednesday night with a fury I had never experienced before. The wind started around 6 in the evening, rattling the windows so hard I thought they might shatter. By 8, the power went out, plunging the house into darkness. I lit candles and sat in the living room, listening to the rain hammer against the roof like 1,000 fists demanding entry. Outside, I could hear trees groaning and cracking, things crashing in the distance. The radio crackled with emergency updates, but the reception kept cutting in and out. Around 2 in the morning, I heard a sound that did not belong to the storm. It was water, but not the rain. This was a rushing, gurgling sound, like a river running where no river should be. I grabbed my flashlight and went to the front door. When I opened it, my heart stopped. Water was pouring down the street, not inches but feet of it, brown and churning with debris, and it was rising fast. I shut the door and backed away, but it did not matter. Within minutes, water started seeping under the door, spreading across the hardwood floor Thomas had installed himself. I ran to the kitchen and saw it coming from there too, pooling around the base of the cabinets. The house was flooding, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I moved as fast as I could. I grabbed the photo albums first, the ones with our wedding pictures and Derek's baby photos and every Christmas and birthday for 30 years. I stuffed them into garbage bags, hoping they would stay dry. I grabbed my important papers, the deed to the house, my birth certificate, Thomas's death certificate. I threw clothes into another bag without even looking at what I was grabbing. The water reached my knees, then my waist. I waded to the stairs and climbed to the second floor, dragging my bags behind me. From the hallway window, I could see the water outside, a dark, churning sea where my front yard used to be. The rose bushes were completely submerged. The mailbox had disappeared. I climbed into the attic, pushing aside boxes of Christmas decorations and old clothes I had been meaning to donate. There was a small window up there, and through it, I could see nothing but rain and darkness. I sat on an old trunk, clutching my bags, and waited. The water kept rising. I could hear it beneath me, filling the second floor now, claiming everything I owned. At some point, I started praying. I had not prayed in years, not really, but the words came back like muscle memory. Dawn came gray and wet, but the rain had finally stopped. From my attic window, I saw a rescue boat making its way down what used to be my street. I waved a white towel until they spotted me, and 2 men in yellow rain gear helped me climb through the window and into their boat. As we motored away, I looked back at my house. The first floor was completely underwater. The front porch where I used to drink my morning coffee was gone. 30 years of my life vanished beneath brown water. They took us to the high school, which had been converted into an emergency shelter. Hundreds of people were already there, lying on cots in the gymnasium, wandering around with dazed expressions. Children were crying. Someone was having a panic attack in the corner. The whole place smelled like wet clothes and fear. I found a cot near the back and sat down with my bags. That was when I noticed Mrs. Thompson from 2 streets over. She was 80 years old, a widow like me, and she was sitting on her cot staring at nothing. I went to sit beside her, and she told me she had lost everything. Her house, her furniture, all her photographs. Even her wedding ring had slipped off her finger when she was struggling through the water. 60 years of marriage gone. She kept looking at her bare hand like she could not understand what had happened to it. That night I found a quiet corner and called Derek. He answered on the 5th ring. "Mom, what time is it?" "Derek, there was a flood. The house is gone. Everything is gone. I am at the high school shelter right now, but I do not know what to do. I do not have anywhere to go." There was silence on the other end. Then, "Oh no, that is terrible. Are you okay though?" Like physically you are not hurt. No, I am not hurt. But Derek, I need help. I need somewhere to stay. Just for a little while until I figure things out. More silence. I could hear Brittany's voice in the background asking who was on the phone. Let me talk to Brittany and call you back, okay, Mom? We will figure something out. The line went dead. I waited. I waited all the next day, checking my phone every few minutes, jumping every time it buzzed with an emergency alert or a text from the Red Cross. Derek did not call. He did not text. By the second night, I called him again. This time he sounded uncomfortable. His voice had that forced casualness people use when they are about to disappoint you. So Mom, Brittany, and I talked. Our place is really small, you know, and she works from home now. She needs it quiet. It would be really hard to have someone else there. Derek, I am your mother. I would not be in the way. I would help around the house. I could cook. I could clean. You would barely notice I was there. I know, Mom, but it is just not a good time. Maybe you could stay at a hotel for a bit. I can send you some money. I cannot afford a hotel for weeks or months, Derek. The insurance is going to take forever. I do not know how long I will need. Another pause. In the background, I heard Brittany say something I could not make out. What about your car? Derek said. It still runs, right? Maybe you could just sleep there for a little while, just until things settle down. I am really busy with this big project at work, Mom. I will figure something out soon, I promise. I could not speak. I could not believe what I was hearing. Sleep in my car? I was 58 years old. I had raised this boy by myself, worked myself to the bone so he could have everything he needed. I had mortgaged my house so he could go to college. And now he was telling me to sleep in my car. Derek, I said, my voice shaking. Do you remember what I did for you, all those years working 2 jobs, going without, so you could have I put a roof over your head, food in your stomach, a bicycle under the Christmas tree. I gave up everything for you. I know, Mom. I appreciate that, I really do. But I have my own life now. I cannot just drop everything. Give me some time. Okay, I will call you soon. He hung up. I sat there in that crowded gymnasium surrounded by strangers who had lost everything just like me, and I cried. I cried until my chest hurt and my throat was raw. Not for my house, not for my belongings. For my son. For the boy I had loved more than life itself, who had just told me to sleep in my car because I was an inconvenience. A week later, the water receded enough for me to go back and see the house. I drove there with my heart in my throat, hoping somehow it would not be as bad as I remembered. It was worse. The front door was hanging off its hinges, swollen with water damage. Inside, the walls were streaked with black mold, the floor buckled and warped beyond repair. Everything that had not been above the waterline was destroyed. My furniture, my books, the kitchen table where Derek used to do his homework. I walked through the rooms like a ghost, trying to find something, anything worth saving. In what used to be the living room, I found the door frame where we had marked Derek's height every year. The water had reached it, blurring the lines, washing away the penciled numbers. I touched the smudged marks and felt something break inside me. A structural engineer came a few days later to assess the damage. He walked around with a clipboard tapping walls, looking at the foundation. When he was done, he told me the house was a total loss. The water damage was too extensive. The foundation was compromised. It would have to be demolished. But the insurance will cover rebuilding, right? I asked. He shook his head. The cost of demolition and rebuilding exceeds your policy limits. You might get enough to tear it down and clear the lot, but that is about it. I stood in the wreckage of my life and understood finally that everything was gone. 30 years washed away in a single night. And my son, the person I loved most in this world, did not care enough to offer me a couch. The shelter closed 2 weeks after the flood. They gave us lists of resources, phone numbers for aid organizations, pamphlets about rental assistance programs that had waiting lists months long. Then they sent us on our way. Most people had somewhere to go, family members who took them and friends with spare rooms, churches that opened their doors. I had none of that. I had a car, a few garbage bags of soggy belongings, and the clothes on my back. I had heard that some Walmart parking lots let people sleep in their cars overnight without calling the police. I found one on the edge of town away from the main road and parked in a far corner near the shopping cart return. That first night, I sat in the driver's seat and watched the sun go down, wondering how my life had come to this. You do not realize how uncomfortable a car is until you try to sleep in one. The seats never recline far enough, no matter how much you adjust them. My 58-year-old back screamed at me every time I moved. I bought a cheap sleeping bag from the clearance bin inside and a small pillow, but nothing could make that cramped space feel like anything other than a prison. The nights were the hardest. Trucks rumbled through the parking lot at all hours, their headlights sweeping across my windshield. Teenagers gathered in the far corner, their music thumping until well past midnight. One night, two men had a loud argument right next to my car, close enough that I could hear every curse word. I locked my doors and lay very still, hardly breathing, until they finally moved away. The mornings brought their own humiliations. I needed to use the bathroom, wash my face, brush my teeth. The only option was the gas station down the street. I would wait until the parking lot was nearly empty, then drive over and hurry inside, hoping no one would notice the disheveled woman with the wrinkled clothes and the desperate eyes. I learned to time my visits for when the cashier was busy with customers, when I could slip into the restroom unseen. My money was running out fast. I had about $2,000 left in my savings account, the remnants of the $15,000 I had given Derek for his wedding. Gas was expensive. Food was expensive. Even the cheap stuff from the dollar menu added up when you had to eat 3 times a day. I started skipping breakfast, then lunch. 1 meal a day, I told myself. That was all I needed. I tried to find work. I had decades of experience as a cashier and a waitress. How hard could it be? Harder than I thought. Every application asked for a permanent address, and I did not have one. I could see the suspicion in their eyes when I tried to explain my situation. One manager at a grocery store told me point blank that they did not hire homeless people. I was not homeless. I wanted to scream. I had a house. I had a life. I just lost it. A diner on the highway was hiring waitresses. I put on the cleanest clothes I had practiced my smile in the rearview mirror and went in for an interview. The manager was a tired-looking woman in her 40s. She looked at my application, then looked at me. "How old are you?" she asked. 58. She shook her head. "We need someone with more energy. Younger, you know. This job is fast-paced." I left without a word. What was there to say? I called Derek every week. I did not know why. Maybe I kept hoping he would change his mind, would suddenly remember that I was his mother, and he loved me. The first time he did not answer. He texted back later. "In a meeting, we'll call later." He never called. The second time he picked up, but sounded distracted. I could hear typing in the background, like he was working while he talked to me. I told him about the shelter closing, about living in my car, about trying to find work. He made sympathetic noises, but did not offer any solutions. At the end of the call, he said he would send me some money. He never did. The third time, Brittany answered. "Derek is not available right now." She said, her voice flat and cold. "I will tell him you called." She hung up before I could respond. One night it rained. Not a gentle rain, but a pounding downpour that seemed determined to finish what the flood had started. Water seeped through a crack in my windowsill that I had never noticed before. Within an hour, my sleeping bag was soaked, and I was shivering so hard my teeth chattered. I sat there in the darkness, wet and cold, and utterly alone, remembering all those nights I had held Derek during thunderstorms when he was little. I would wrap him in blankets and tell him stories until the thunder passed. Who was going to take care of me now? The next morning, I woke up with a cough that would not stop. By evening, I had a fever. For 3 days, I lay in my car too sick to move, surviving on bottled water and crackers. No one noticed. No one cared. I was invisible, just another piece of human debris washed up in a parking lot. I got through it eventually. The fever broke, the cough faded to a rattle in my chest. But something inside me had changed. I was not just sad anymore. I was angry. Angry at Derek for abandoning me. Angry at the flood for taking everything I had. angry at myself for spending my whole life giving and giving until there was nothing left. Someone at the shelter had mentioned a mobile home park on the outskirts of town. They let people park their cars overnight for a small fee, much less than a campground or motel. It was not much, but it was something. I drove out there on a gray Thursday afternoon, my lungs still rattling with every breath. The park was a collection of worn trailers arranged around a gravel loop. An old man sat in a lawn chair outside the manager's office watching me pull up. He had white stubble on his chin and walked with a slight limp when he came over to my window. "You looking for a spot?" he asked. "I heard you let people park here." He studied my face for a long moment, taking in the dark circles under my eyes, the pallor of my skin, the cough I could not quite suppress. His name tag said Frank. "You okay there?" he asked. I meant to say I was fine. Instead, to my horror, I started crying. The whole story came pouring out. The flood, Derek, the parking lot, the fever. I could not stop myself. When I finally ran out of words, Frank just stood there nodding slowly. "First week is free," he said. "Get yourself better first. We will figure out the rest later." I parked in a spot near the back of the lot, under a big oak tree that provided some shade. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks, not because anything had changed, but because someone had shown me kindness. It was such a small thing, 1 week free, but it reminded me that not everyone in the world was like Derek. Frank became a friend. He was 71 years old, a Vietnam veteran who had seen things he did not like to talk about. His wife had passed away a decade ago, and his children lived far away. We did not have much in common except loneliness, but sometimes that is enough. He would bring me coffee in the mornings, hot and black, in a chipped mug that said, "World's Best Grandpa." We would sit and talk, or sometimes just sit in silence watching the sun come up. He told me about the war once, about friends he had lost, about the nightmares that still woke him up some nights. I told him about Thomas, about raising Derek alone, about how I had given everything I had only to end up here. "You know what I learned over there?" Frank said one morning. "People show you who they are when things get hard. The ones who really love you, they step up. The ones who do not, well, now you know." A month after the flood, Derek sent me a text message. My heart jumped when I saw his name on my screen. I opened it with trembling fingers. "Hey, Mom. Hope you are doing okay. Things are crazy busy here. Brittany might be pregnant. We are waiting for confirmation. Talk soon." I read it 3 times, trying to find something more in those few sentences. Some hint of apology, some acknowledgement of what he had done. There was nothing. He was going to be a father, and he could not even ask where I was sleeping. I texted back congratulations, asked when I might be able to see him. He did not respond. 2 months into living in my car, I walked into a gas station bathroom and caught sight of myself in the mirror. I almost did not recognize the woman staring back at me. My hair had gone completely gray and hung limp and unwashed around my face. My cheeks were sunken, my eyes hollow. I had lost at least 10 pounds, maybe more. I looked old. I looked defeated. For one terrible moment, a dark thought crossed my mind. What was the point of going on? My house was gone. My son did not want me. I had nothing and no one. Would anyone even notice if I disappeared? But then I thought of Thomas. I thought of the way he used to look at me like I was the most amazing woman in the world. I thought of the promises we made to each other, that we would fight for our family no matter what. And I realized that giving up would mean letting Derek win. It would mean proving that I was nothing without someone to take care of. No. I had survived worse than this. I had buried my husband. I had raised a child alone. I had worked 2 jobs for years without complaint. I was not going to let this break me. Not the flood. Not Derek. Not anything. I washed my face, combed my fingers through my tangled hair, and walked back out to my car. I did not know what came next, but I knew one thing for certain. I was going to survive this, and someday, somehow, I was going to thrive. The coffee shop was small, the kind of place where the barista knows your order and people linger for hours over a single cup. I had started going there because they had free Wi-Fi, and did not mind if I sat in the corner with my phone scrolling through job listings and checking the status of my insurance claim. The coffee was a luxury I could not really afford, but some days I needed to feel human again, even if it was just for an hour. I was sitting at my usual table when I heard someone call my name. Carolyn Davis. I looked up to see a woman about my age standing by the counter. She had neatly styled brown hair, simple but elegant clothes, and a face that tugged at my memory. It took me a moment to place her. Margaret Sullivan. She broke into a wide smile and hurried over to my table. I cannot believe it. How long has it been? 30 years? More than that. Margaret and I had been friends in high school, the kind of friends who passed notes in class and spent Friday nights at the movie theater. After graduation, we had drifted apart the way people do. She went to college. I got married. Life happened. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "I own a bakery just down the street. I was grabbing my afternoon caffeine fix." She looked at me more closely, and her smile faded. "Carolyn, are you okay? You look tired." That was an understatement. I tried to deflect to say I was fine, but something about Margaret's concerned eyes broke through my defenses. Maybe it was because she was from before, from a time when my life made sense. Whatever it was, I found myself telling her everything. The flood, Derek, the parking lot, the mobile home park, the failed job interviews, the cough that would not quite go away, the savings account that was nearly empty, all of it. Margaret listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hand. "That is not okay, Carolyn. None of that is okay. You raised that boy alone. You worked yourself to the bone for him, and this is how he treats you." "He has his own life now," I said, echoing the excuse I had been telling myself for months. "That is not an excuse. That is not even close to an excuse." She squeezed my hand. "Listen, I need help at my bakery. My assistant just moved away, and I have been running myself ragged trying to do everything alone. It is not glamorous. Serving customers, working the register, cleaning up. But it is honest work, and I could use someone I trust." "Margaret, I cannot ask you to do that." "You did not ask. I am offering." She smiled. "Can you start Monday?" I started crying right there in the coffee shop, tears running down my face while other customers pretended not to notice. Margaret just handed me napkins and waited. "Thank you," I finally managed. "You have no idea what this means." "I think I do," she said. "I have been where you are, Carolyn. Not exactly, but close enough. When my husband left me, I thought my life was over. I had 2 daughters and no job and no idea how I was going to survive. But I figured it out. I started baking in my kitchen and selling to neighbors. One thing led to another, and now I have a shop. You will figure it out too. I am just giving you a place to start." Monday came and I put on the best clothes I had, which was not saying much. The bakery was called Sweet Memories, a cozy little place with cream-colored walls and the warm smell of fresh-baked bread. Margaret showed me around, introduced me to the ovens and the display cases, taught me how to work the old-fashioned register. The work was not hard, but it was steady. Customers came in a regular stream throughout the day, regulars who knew Margaret by name, young mothers with strollers looking for a treat, office workers grabbing pastries for meetings. I learned to smile, to make small talk, to wrap boxes with ribbon and count change quickly. It felt good to have a purpose again. One of the regulars was a woman named Dorothy. She was in her mid-60s, elegant in a quiet way, always dressed in soft colors that complemented her silver hair. She came in every afternoon, ordered a pot of tea and a scone, and sat by the window reading for hours. After a few weeks, she started chatting with me when I refilled her teapot. I learned that Dorothy was a widow like me had been for almost 15 years. Her husband had been a professor at the local college. They had 2 children who had moved across the country for careers and rarely visited. She lived alone in a big house that was much too quiet. "Do you ever get lonely?" I asked her one afternoon. She set down her book and looked at me with understanding eyes. "Every single day. That is why I come here. It is better than sitting in an empty house waiting for the phone to ring. We became friends after that. Dorothy had a dry sense of humor and a sharp mind. She had traveled all over the world with her husband and had stories about every continent. Talking to her reminded me that life could hold more than just struggle and survival. One day after I'd been working at the bakery for about a month, Dorothy asked me a question that changed everything. "Carolyn, where are you living these days?" I hesitated. I had not told her about the mobile home park, about the car, about any of it. I did not want her pity, but Dorothy was persistent. "You do not have to tell me if you do not want to, but I have noticed that you wear the same 3 outfits every week, and you always look tired, and you never talk about going home. So either you are a minimalist with insomnia or something else is going on." So I told her. Not all of it, but enough. The flood, the car, the park. Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I have 4 bedrooms in my house and no one to fill them. Would you consider renting one? I would not charge much. Honestly, I would be doing it as much for myself as for you. The silence is driving me crazy." I did not know what to say. I had learned to be suspicious of kindness, to wonder what people wanted in return. But Dorothy's offer seemed genuine, no ulterior motive, just one lonely person reaching out to another. "Are you sure?" I asked. "I have never been more sure of anything. Please say yes. I am tired of talking to myself." I said yes. The room Dorothy gave me was small, but perfect. It had a window that looked out over her garden, white curtains that let in the morning light, and a bed. A real bed, with a mattress and pillows and clean sheets. That first night, I lay there in the darkness and cried from pure relief. 3 months of sleeping in my car, waking up stiff and sore and cold, and now I had a room, a door I could close, a roof over my head. I called Frank the next day to thank him and let him know I was moving on. His voice crackled through the phone. "Good for you," he said. "You deserve it. You are one of the tough ones. I could tell that the first day I met you." "I could not have made it without your help, Frank. That free week, the coffee, all of it." "You would have made it," he said. "You just needed a little kindness to remind you who you were." About a month after I moved into Dorothy's house, I got a letter from the insurance company. They had finally processed my claim. Inside was a check for $85,000. I stared at that number for a long time. It was not enough to rebuild my old house. It was not enough to buy anything comparable in today's market. But it was more money than I had seen in one place in years. For the first time since the flood, I felt like I had options. I asked Margaret if she knew a good lawyer, someone who could help me figure out what to do next. She gave me the name of Harold Peterson, an older gentleman who had handled her divorce years ago. He had an office downtown. Nothing fancy, just a desk piled with papers and a view of the parking lot. Harold looked over my documents with careful attention. He asked about the house, the flood, the insurance. Then he stopped at one paper and frowned. "This deed," he said. "Is this yours?" I looked at what he was holding. It was a property deed, old and yellowed, that I had grabbed along with my other important papers during the flood. I had not looked at it since. "That is a piece of land my father left me," I said. "Out past the old mill road. It has been in the family for generations, but it is just woods, nothing useful. I had honestly forgotten about it." Harold typed something into his computer, squinting at the screen. His eyebrows went up. "Mrs. Davis," he said slowly, "do you know what this land is worth today?" "Nothing," I assumed. "It is in the middle of nowhere." "Not anymore. There is a development going in about 2 miles from your property. Shopping centers, housing developments, the whole 9 yards. Land out that way has skyrocketed in value." He turned the screen toward me. "Based on comparable sales, your parcel could be worth $300,000. Maybe more if you find the right buyer." I could not breathe. I could not think. $300,000. "That cannot be right," I said. "I can have it appraised properly, but I am fairly confident. You have been sitting on a gold mine and did not even know it." That night I lay awake for hours thinking about my father. He had taken me to that land when I was a little girl. We would pack sandwiches and go fishing in the creek that ran through the property. He used to say, "This land will take care of you someday, Carolyn. Never sell it unless you have to." I had thought he was being sentimental. Turns out he was right. I went out to see the land the next weekend. Dorothy offered to drive me. The roads had changed since I was a child. New subdivisions and strip malls where there used to be only fields. But I found the property eventually. It was overgrown thick with trees and underbrush, but I could still see the creek where my father and I used to fish. I stood there for a long time remembering. His patience as he taught me to cast a line. The smell of the sandwiches my mother packed. The way the sunlight filtered through the leaves. "Thank you, Daddy," I whispered. "I will not let this go to waste." I decided not to sell all of it. The whole parcel was 20 acres. I would sell 10 and keep 10. That would give me enough money to start fresh, while still honoring my father's legacy. Harold found me a buyer within 2 weeks, a developer who was assembling land for a new shopping complex. He offered me $200,000 for the 10 acres, and I accepted. With that money plus my insurance payout, I had nearly $300,000, enough to buy a house. A real house with walls and doors and a garden of my own. For the first time in 6 months, I felt something I had almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. I started looking at houses the very next week. Margaret came with me on the weekends offering opinions and moral support. We looked at a lot of places that were not quite right. One was too old with plumbing that groaned and a roof that looked suspicious. One was in a neighborhood where the traffic noise never stopped. One had a seller who changed the price 3 times during our conversation. But the fourth house was different. It sat on a quiet street in a nice neighborhood about 15 minutes from the bakery. The previous owners were an elderly couple who had decided to move to Florida to be closer to their grandchildren. They had taken good care of the place, and it showed. The house had 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. The living room was spacious with big windows that let in the afternoon sun. The kitchen had been updated recently with granite counters and stainless steel appliances. But my favorite part was the backyard. It was big enough for a real garden, with room for flowers and vegetables, and maybe even a little patio. "This is it," I said to Margaret as we stood in the empty living room. "This is my house." The price was $275,000. With my insurance money and land sale, I could afford it outright. No mortgage, no bank, nothing hanging over my head. Harold helped me review the contract, and 2 weeks later, I signed my name on the closing documents. When the realtor handed me the keys, I just stood there holding them, unable to move. Margaret put her arm around me and did not say anything. She did not have to. I spent the first week painting. I chose pale blue for the living room because it reminded me of the sky on clear mornings. The bedroom got a warm cream color that seemed to glow in the lamplight. I bought secondhand furniture and refinished it myself, sanding and staining until my arms ached. Every piece I chose was something I actually wanted, not something I settled for because it was cheap. The garden took longer. I started with roses because that was what Thomas had always grown. Pink ones and red ones, and one yellow bush that turned out to be the hardiest of all. Then I added lavender because I loved the smell, and daisies because they were cheerful, and a small vegetable patch in the corner where I could grow tomatoes and peppers. Frank came to visit once the garden was in. He helped me install some shelves in the living room's sturdy oak planks that could hold all my books. We worked together in comfortable silence the way we used to back at the mobile home park. When we finished, he sat in my new living room and looked around with an expression of quiet satisfaction. "You did good, Carolyn," he said. "You did real good." Life fell into a rhythm. I woke up early, made coffee, and sat on my back porch watching the sunrise. I went to work at the bakery where Margaret was teaching me to make some of the simpler pastries. I came home, worked in my garden, and had dinner with Dorothy 2 or 3 times a week. I went to bed in my own room in my own house, safe and warm and at peace. My neighbors were good people. The Martinez family to my left had 2 young children who liked to peer through the fence at my flowers. I started baking cookies for them on the weekends, watching their eyes light up when I brought them over. The woman on my right was named Helen, a retired teacher in her 70s with a sharp wit and a love of gardening. We became fast friends, trading cuttings and tips and cups of tea. For the first time in my life, I was not taking care of someone else. I was not working 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads. I was not sacrificing my needs for my son's wants. I was just living simply and quietly, and it was more than enough. Sometimes I thought about Derek. He still had not responded to my text about my new address. I assumed he did not care where I was living as long as it was not with him. The anger I had felt in those early months had faded into something quieter. Not forgiveness exactly, but acceptance. He was who he was. I could not change that. I could only control how I responded. One night I was sitting in my living room with a cup of tea when I noticed a photograph on the bookshelf. It was Thomas, taken a few months before the accident, standing in our old backyard with dirt on his hands and a huge smile on his face. He had just planted those rose bushes, the ones the flood eventually destroyed. "I finally did it, Thomas," I said to the photograph. "I am okay now, better than okay." I knew he could not hear me, but I also knew somehow that he would have been proud. Not of the house or the money or any of the material things. He would have been proud because I did not give up, because I found my way through the darkness and came out the other side. That night, I slept better than I had in years. 6 months had passed since the flood. My garden was in full bloom, a riot of colors that made me smile every time I looked out the window. It was a Saturday afternoon, warm and sunny, the kind of day that makes you grateful to be alive. I was outside trimming my rose bushes when I heard a car pull up in front of the house. I looked up and felt my stomach drop. It was a black SUV, expensive and shiny, the kind Derek always said he wanted. As I watched, 2 people got out. Derek was wearing a polo shirt and khaki pants, looking like he had just stepped out of a catalog. Brittany was beside him in a flowing summer dress, her belly round and prominent. She looked like she was due any day. They stood on the sidewalk for a moment looking at my house. I could see them taking in the size of it, the nice neighborhood, the well-kept yard. Brittany said something to Derek, and he nodded. Then they walked toward me. "Mom?" Derek called out, his voice pitched higher than usual. "Wow, nice place. When did you get this?" I stood up slowly, brushing dirt off my gloves. "A few months ago." "A few months?" He looked genuinely surprised. "Why did you not tell us?" "I texted you my new address. You never responded." Derek's face flickered just for a second before the smile came back. "We have been so crazy busy with baby stuff, you know how it is. Right, babe?" Brittany nodded, one hand on her belly. "The pregnancy has just taken over everything. I barely have time to breathe." I did not say anything. I just looked at them, waiting. "Can we come inside?" Derek asked. "See the place? It looks amazing from out here." I did not want them in my house, but I was raised to be polite, and old habits die hard. So I led them inside, watching as their eyes darted around the living room, the kitchen, the hallway. 3 bedrooms, Derek said, counting the doors. "That is a lot of space for one person, Mom." "It is exactly the right amount of space for me." Brittany had wandered off toward the back of the house. I heard her open a door, heard her gasp of approval. "Derek, come look at this room," she called. "It gets the most beautiful natural light. Can you imagine what we could do with this?" Derek went to join her. I followed, already knowing what was coming. They were standing in the smallest bedroom, the one I had been thinking about turning into a reading room. Brittany was practically glowing. "This would be perfect," she said. "Absolutely perfect." We went back to the living room and sat down. Derek and Brittany on my couch, me in the armchair across from them. The silence stretched out until Derek cleared his throat. "So, Mom, Brittany and I have been talking. The baby is coming in about 3 months," Brittany added, "and our apartment is just too small. We have barely enough room for ourselves, let alone a nursery." "We were thinking," Derek continued, "since you have all this space here, maybe we could move in, just for a while until we find something bigger." I did not respond right away. I wanted to make sure I understood what they were asking. "You want to move in with me?" I said slowly. "It makes so much sense," Brittany said enthusiastically. "You have 3 bedrooms. You only need 1. The other 2 could be our bedroom and the nursery. And think about it, you would get to see your grandchild every day. Plus, it would save us a ton of money," Derek added. "Rent is insane right now. We have been looking, but everything decent is way out of our budget. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. He was 32 years old, healthy, and employed wearing clothes that probably cost more than I spent on food in a month. And he was sitting in my living room asking me for free housing like it was the most natural thing in the world. Let me make sure I understand, I said, keeping my voice very calm. 6 months ago, when I lost everything in the flood, you told me to sleep in my car. You said you were too busy to help. You did not offer me your couch for even one night. Mom, that was different. Our apartment was tiny and Brittany works from home. There was literally no room. I was your mother. I raised you by myself for 25 years. I worked 2 jobs so you could have everything you needed. I mortgaged my house so you could go to college. Derek shifted uncomfortably. I know, and I appreciate all of that. But we were in a tough spot too. Brittany was stressed about work, we had bills to pay. I slept in a parking lot for 2 months, I said. I got so sick I thought I might die. I went days without eating a proper meal. And in all that time, you sent me one text message asking if I was okay. Then you disappeared. I did not disappear. I was just busy. Too busy for your own mother, but not too busy to show up now that I have a nice house you want to live in. Brittany was starting to look annoyed. Her lips pressed together in a thin line, and she sat up straighter. Look, she said. We are trying to do what is best for the baby. Family should help each other. That is what family does. I turned to face her directly. Family should help each other. Where was that attitude when I was homeless? When I was sleeping in my car in a Walmart parking lot? I did not know it was that bad. Derek said you were handling it. I looked at Derek. You told her I was handling it. He did not meet my eyes. Let me tell you what I was handling, I said. I was handling waking up every morning with my back in agony because car seats do not recline far enough for sleeping. I was handling washing my face in gas station bathrooms and hoping no one would notice the homeless woman in the corner. I was handling rationing crackers to make them last longer because I did not have money for real food. I was handling being turned away from jobs because I did not have an address to put on the application. I paused to take a breath. Neither of them said anything. Do you know who helped me? Not you. Strangers. A woman I went to high school with 30 years ago gave me a job when no one else would. A customer at the bakery let me rent a room in her house. An old man at a trailer park gave me a free week when I had nowhere else to go. These people owed me nothing, and they showed me more kindness than my own son. Derek's face had gone pale. Brittany looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. I am not going to let you move in, I said. Mom, please. Derek leaned forward, his voice taking on a pleading tone. Think about the baby, your grandchild. Do you not want to be part of their life? I would love to have a relationship with my grandchild, but I will not be used. You do not get to ignore me when I need you, and then show up with your hand out when you need something. Brittany stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. Derek, let us go. Wait. Derek held up his hand. Mom, I know I was not there for you. I know I messed up. But cannot we move past this? You never apologized, I said. Not once in 6 months. You never said you were sorry. You never admitted you did anything wrong. And now you are only here because you want something from me. I am sorry. Okay. Is that what you want to hear? I am sorry. It is too late for sorry to fix this by itself. If you want to rebuild our relationship, it has to be based on respect, not on what you can get from me. Brittany was already heading for the door. Come on, Derek, she is clearly not going to help us. Derek stood up slowly. He looked at me with an expression I could not quite read. Confusion, maybe. Or the dawning realization that he was not going to get what he wanted. Fine, he said quietly. We will go. I walked them to the door. Brittany was already outside, her heels clicking on the walkway as she hurried toward the car. Derek paused on the threshold. I really am sorry, Mom, he said. I just did not know what to do. You could have opened your door, I said. That is all. You could have opened your door. He did not have an answer for that. He turned and walked to the car. I watched them back out of the driveway and drive away, and then I closed the door and leaned against it, suddenly exhausted. I had done it. I had said no. For the first time in 32 years, I had put myself first. And it felt like the hardest and best thing I had ever done. In the days after Derek and Brittany left, I kept waiting for regret to set in. For that familiar guilt to wash over me, the voice in my head telling me I was being selfish, that a good mother would have said yes. But the regret never came. Instead, I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. Peace. Life went on. I tended my garden. I worked at the bakery. I had tea with Dorothy and planted flowers with Helen. The simple rhythms of ordinary life, and they were enough. They were more than enough. Margaret noticed the change in me. One afternoon, as we were closing up the shop, she asked about the visit from Derek. I told her what had happened, what I had said, what it had felt like to finally stand up for myself. "You did the right thing," she said. "Boundaries are not walls. They are just lines that show people where you end and they begin." "I spent my whole life without any boundaries," I admitted. "I thought that was what love meant, giving and giving until there was nothing left. And now I know that was wrong. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and you cannot teach people to respect you by letting them walk all over you." 2 weeks later, I got a text message from a number I did not recognize. When I opened it, my heart skipped. "The baby was born yesterday. A girl. I thought you should know. This is Brittany's mother." A girl. I had a granddaughter. I sat with that information for a long time, turning it over in my mind, like a stone in my hand. Part of me wanted to rush over there to hold this new life in my arms, to be the grandmother I had always imagined I would be. But another part of me knew that nothing had changed. Derek had not reached out. He had not apologized. Going over there now would just be walking back into the same old pattern, giving and giving, while getting nothing in return. So I sent back a simple message. "Congratulations to Derek and Brittany. I wish the baby health and happiness." And I left it at that. Spring came, and with it unexpected sorrow. Frank passed away in his sleep one night, quietly and peacefully, the way he always said he wanted to go. I found out from the manager who took over the mobile home park, a young man who had known Frank for years. The funeral was small. A handful of people from the park, a few veterans from the local VFW, and me. I stood by his grave and thought about all the mornings we had shared drinking coffee in silence, watching the sun come up. He had been kind to me when I had nothing. He had believed in me when I did not believe in myself. I would carry that with me forever. A few days after the funeral, a lawyer contacted me. Frank had left me something in his will. It was not money. It was just an old rocking chair worn smooth by decades of use, along with a note written in shaky handwriting. "For sunny afternoons in your garden, you earned it." I put that chair in my backyard, under the shade of the oak tree near my vegetable patch. Every afternoon I sat there and read, or just watched the clouds roll by. And every time I rocked back and forth, I thought of Frank and smiled. Summer arrived hot and humid, the way Carolina summers always are. The bakery was busy with tourists and vacationers, and Margaret asked if I would be willing to take on more responsibility. She was thinking about opening a second location across town, and she needed someone she trusted to manage the original shop. "Me?" I said, stunned. "I have only been here a few months." "And in those few months, you have learned faster than anyone I have ever hired. The customers love you. The accounts are always perfect. You are more than ready." So I became a manager. It was strange having real responsibility, being trusted with something important. For so long, my value had been measured only in what I could sacrifice for others. Now I was being recognized for what I could contribute. A year after the flood, I stood in my garden and took stock of my life. I was 59 years old. My house was paid off. I had steady work and good friends. My health was better than it had been in years. The nightmares about the flood had mostly stopped, and when I thought about those terrible months in my car, it felt like remembering a story that had happened to someone else. Dorothy and I took a trip together that fall, a short road trip, to see the autumn leaves in the mountains. We drove with the windows down and the radio playing, stopping at roadside stands for apple cider and pumpkin bread. It was the first vacation I had taken in more than a decade, and I laughed more in those 3 days than I had in years. Helen, my neighbor, taught me to knit. We sat on her porch on cool evenings, our needles clicking, working on blankets and scarves that we donated to a shelter downtown. She told me stories about her years as a teacher, about the students who had made her proud, and the ones who had broken her heart. We became the kind of friends who did not need to fill every silence with words. And then one evening in October, my phone rang. It was Derek. I almost did not answer. My finger hovered over the screen for 3 rings before I finally accepted the call. "Mom?" His voice sounded different, smaller somehow, tired. "Hello, Derek. I need to talk to you. Can I come over?" I hesitated. "When?" "Now, if that is okay." He arrived 20 minutes later alone. No Brittany, no baby. Just Derek standing on my doorstep with dark circles under his eyes and a weariness that seemed to go deeper than lack of sleep. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside and let him enter. We sat in the living room, him on the couch where he and Brittany had sat 6 months earlier, me in my armchair. "Where is Brittany?" I asked. "Where is the baby?" He did not answer right away. His hands were clasped between his knees, and he stared at the floor like he was searching for words written in the carpet. "She left me," he finally said. "About a month ago. She took the baby and moved back in with her parents. She says she needs space to think about what she wants." I did not know what to say. Part of me felt vindicated. Another part just felt sad. "I am sorry to hear that," I said and meant it. "I messed everything up, Mom." He looked up at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. "Brittany, you everything. I kept thinking I was too busy, that I would deal with things later, that everything would just work itself out. And now I am alone. My wife is gone. My daughter is growing up without me. And my mother does not want anything to do with me." "That is not true," I said. "I never said I did not want anything to do with you." "But you said I could not move in. You said no." "Saying no to being used is not the same as saying no to a relationship. I said no because you only showed up when you wanted something, not because I stopped loving you." He was crying openly now, tears running down his face. "I did not realize what I had until I lost it. All those years you were always there, always sacrificing, always giving. I thought that was just what mothers did. I did not understand until Brittany left how hard you must have worked to keep everything together." "What do you want from me, Derek?" He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "Nothing. I do not want anything. I just wanted you to know that I am sorry. Really, truly sorry. For everything. For telling you to sleep in your car. For not calling. For showing up here with Brittany like you owed us something. I was wrong, and I am sorry." I let the silence stretch between us. I had waited a long time to hear those words. I had imagined this moment during those cold nights in my car, dreamed about it in Dorothy's spare room, thought about what I would say when Derek finally admitted he was wrong. Now that it was here, I felt something I had not expected. Compassion. Not for the son who had abandoned me, but for the lost man sitting on my couch, finally realizing the cost of his choices. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "It means a lot to hear it." "Do you think we could try again?" he asked. As mother and son, I know I do not deserve it. But I am trying to be better. I am seeing a therapist, working on understanding why I did the things I did. I want to be different. I want to be the son you deserve." I took a deep breath. "Derek, I love you. I will always love you. But love does not mean I have to accept being treated badly. If you want to rebuild our relationship, it has to be based on respect, not on what either of us can get from the other." "I understand. We can take it slow. Maybe coffee sometime, maybe lunch. But I am not going to pretend the last year did not happen. We have to acknowledge what was broken before we can fix it. That is fair, he said. That is more than fair. He left soon after that. At the door he hugged me. Really hugged me for the first time in years. I felt his shoulders shake with silent sobs, and I held him the way I had when he was a frightened little boy, when the thunder was loud and the world seemed scary. I love you, Mom, he whispered. I love you too, Derek. I always have. I always will. After he drove away, I went out to my garden and sat in Frank's rocking chair. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. My rose bushes were still blooming, late bloomers holding on to the last warmth of autumn. I thought about everything that had led me to this moment. The flood that took my house, the son who turned his back, the strangers who became friends, the strength I did not know I had until I was forced to find it. For 32 years I had defined myself by what I gave to others. I was Derek's mother, Thomas's widow, the woman who worked 2 jobs, the one who always said yes, who never asked for anything in return, who sacrificed until there was nothing left to give. Now for the first time, I was just Carolyn, a woman with her own house, her own garden, her own life. A woman who had learned finally that saying no could be an act of love. That boundaries were not walls, but bridges connecting us to others while still protecting who we are. I did not know what would happen with Derek. Maybe we would rebuild something meaningful. Maybe we would drift apart again. But I knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened, I would be okay. Because I had learned the most important lesson of my life. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and you cannot love others well until you love yourself first. I opened my journal that night and wrote by lamplight. I lost my house in the flood, but I found something more valuable, myself. For 32 years I was Derek's mother. Now I am just Carolyn, and that is enough. That is more than enough. I closed the journal and looked out the window. The moon was rising over my garden, silver light spilling across the flowers Thomas would have loved. Somewhere out there, Derek was beginning his own journey of growth. Somewhere my granddaughter was sleeping peacefully, unaware of all the complicated history that had brought her into this world. And here I was, 59 years old, starting over finally at peace. I smiled and turned off the lamp. Tomorrow would be a new day. And for the first time in a very long time, I was looking forward to it. I want to ask you something before I go. Have you ever had to say no to someone you love, even when it was the hardest thing you ever did? Have you ever had to choose yourself after years of putting everyone else first? If this story touched your heart, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, someone who is struggling to set boundaries or find their own worth, please share this story with them. Sometimes the reminder that we deserve respect and love is the most important gift we can give. If you enjoyed this story, please take a moment to hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and reminds them that they are not alone. And if you want to hear more stories about family resilience and finding your strength again, please subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, no matter what you are going through, no matter how dark things seem, there is always a way forward. Sometimes you just have to be brave enough to take the first step. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And most importantly, take care of your hearts.